Nigerians are expected to seek out the best.
2 words to describe the activity.
The Yoruba Unity Forum is conducted.
Be the first to know.
On CoreTV News.
From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa.
Presidential
We break the news.
Women in Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live
I wish you would.
as the news spreads. We are CoreTV News,
Welcome to CoreTV Primetime
our
News.
24-hour news station.
Well, welcome back from that break. It's the newspaper review now here on Core Digest Extra. We have the Nation newspaper here, and on the front page here, the very bold caption is saying that first, constitutional amendments, where senators, reps, that's members of the lower legislative chamber of the National Assembly, House of Representatives, the members there plot to defy Supreme Court. And the rider is saying that lawmakers, 4 billion naira spent on confab must not be wasted. The presidency moves to checkmate them. And that's on the front page of the Nation newspapers. That's not the only caption we have there. If you look at the front page very closely, you would see there a very bold picture where Acting Inspector General of Police Solomon Arashe receiving a salute at the State Police Command headquarters in Lagos. Of course, upon his appointment, he has taken certain steps. In fact, it was reported that he stood in a case of a police officer who, after taking ill, was not being given her entitlement, and of course the final result of that issue is that is now directed that that police officer be sent to the headquarters from where that incident occurred. And of course that such things would give a sign, a very positive sign and signal to a tenure where speculators have said might not last so long. Maybe, maybe not. We wait and see. Still on the front page of the Nation newspapers, May 29th controversy. APC's claims diversionary, says PDP. Now, the writer says no formal meeting yet by transition committees. APC insists. Mechi raps Jonathan. That could be found on page 67. By the way, the first one, which has to do with constitutional amendment, is on page 5 of the Nation newspapers. But the one I just gave now could be found on page 67, still on the Nation newspaper. Now, another one here, just below the APC PDP May 29 controversy, acting IG, that's Solomon Arashe, raises 16 teams to enforce ban on roadblocks. And the writer says, no, no more police escorts for unauthorized persons. We've heard this a couple of times. Even remember the one that has to do with what is popularly called tinted glasses. And such vehicles appears to be on the road. Maybe they have the permit to do that. But again, we'll still see some of these things. Now, before we go outside Nigeria, on the front page of the Nation newspapers, Sambisa forest invasion. That's the bottom corner of bottom part of the Nation newspaper. Sambisa forest invasion. Troops recover horror video clips from Boko Haram's camps. It says it on the rider. Clips contain recordings of beheadings, stoning, other horrifying scenes. Now, the writer continues and says that military experts are analyzing the videos. That could be found on page 63 of the Nation newspapers. Before we leave the Nation newspapers, we won't do that very quickly for obvious reasons. One, the Senate presidency, the issue about which section of the country should be given the Senate presidency. Well, some regions have, of course, come out to say, well, they deserve to have the Senate presidency slot. Also, the president-elect has made it very clear that the federal character will be properly implemented when the government which he will head comes into office. Now, Senate presidency, Southwest Yobe APC endorses Lawan. This name has cropped up the second time over endorsement. The first time it was also endorsed by the Northwest, so to speak, and now Southwest Yobe APC is endorsing Lawan. Possibly this legislator is on his way to becoming the Senate President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, maybe to take over from the David Mark, who has been at the helm of affairs at the upper legislative chamber of the National Assembly for over a decade. So let's see how that turns out. Now, before we leave the Nation newspaper, our last lap on the Nation newspapers. It's the sweetest victory, says British Prime Minister David Cameron, as he sweeps poll. Now, congratulations expectedly has trailed his victory. By the way, in that election, which political analysts are currently calling historic, they said that up to expectations which are now being dashed as a result of the outcome of the elections, the Labour Party and the Conservatives were, so to speak, neck to neck, the pre-elections poll. How come that when the elections were finally held and the results are out, the Labour were completely dispersed, and the Conservatives now majority, not just winning the election, but then now majority will be majority in the upper legislative chamber of the British Parliament, the very British Parliament, the United Kingdom Parliament. And after the elections, the results started trickling out, and it became very obvious, and in fact he has won, the Conservatives have won. The Prime Minister paid a short visit to the Queen, Queen Elizabeth, at Buckingham Palace, where, as is being said, is ceremonial, but so to speak, to have the nod to say, okay, you are now the head of the government. Now, Jonathan congratulates him. And also, what is interesting, maybe interesting to many Nigerians, and of course political watchers even around the world, is the fact that 4 Nigerians are elected into the British Parliament. And it's an increase also in terms of particularly Nigerians who are now to have their opinion in respect to how things should go in their constituency. They're now in the British Parliament. Let's see how that historically, maybe one day we'll also have a British or a European being found in our parliament. Who says it's not possible? It is possible. In fact, here in Nigeria, they were used to this sectional and, so to speak, tribal sentiment, but it's dying down by the day. It's gradually being eroded, though not as fast as we would want, but at least even here in Lagos, we've got elected members who are not by origin from this southwest, but because they're here, they've been elected. And it's also a plus to us. We mustn't forget that. Well, that's, and then another named president of 164-year-old American College. That's also on the radar of the fallout of the British elections. Well, on the front pages of the newspapers here, our next port of call will go to the Guardian newspaper, pardon me, the Vanguard newspaper. Vanguard newspaper, where it is believed that the comment there that Buhari can change the current queues you see of tankers on Apapa Road, which has been a major source of concern to Nigerians. Just in the last week, it was reported that some people spent 12 hours on the, Oshodi Apapa axis, because coming from Apapa to Oshodi, that's the Apapa Oshodi axis, but people spend 12 hours Oshodi Apapa axis, and that is really, really not the best to happen, especially the fact that there are other factors. In fact, it was also reported, I was monitoring what was going on, and it was reported that, of course, the miscreants and hoodlums took advantage of the situation, robbing people of their personal belongings, and all just a fallout of all of this. And there's a write-up here that says that Buhari can change this. We hope to see that happen, and happen very quickly, because also being analyzed is that it's more becoming an anomaly that the entire country would have to come and lift petrol from Apapa when there are other ports, there are other parts of the country that could take off the burden of this, what has become or becoming more of an anomaly in this respect. Now, on the front page of the Vanguard, very boldly there, May 29th transition, you're in trouble. PDP tells APC over official offices. That's the rider, the first rider saying that. Now, the second rider says, tackles Buhari on promises. We all recall the promises that were, in fact, it was made across board. The party that has been voted out of power at the center also made some promises, but here they're saying they're tackling the president-elect on his promises. That could be found on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. So you grab the Vanguard for today, you get the full gist of how all of these comments are put down. The third one here, still PDP, saying that well, PDP is frustrating. This time around, it's the other way around, where PDP, the APC is saying that PDP frustrating transition. AP is insisting that the PDP is frustrating the transition. We all recall the, or you may recall, the transition committee set up by both parties to harmonize the transition to the next incoming government. But here, PDP, APC is saying that the PDP, that's the current government, the outgoing government, is said to be frustrating efforts. You can read all of that and more on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Now, on the Vanguard newspaper, there's a picture there where women in black attire, most of them, except the one in front, most of them are clad in dark attires. And as you know, he's saying that Taro community in Plateau State protesting at the House of Assembly over the killing of their people in their villages in Wase, local government area of the state. Of course, the reports have come out, counter accusations. In fact, there's a reported one of some militia group responsible for the death of some soldiers, and in a bid to put an end to the excesses of the militia group, the army came up and, of course, went looking after them. But here we're seeing the people protesting, saying that their people, particularly in Tarok villages, have been killed, and they're protesting at the House of Assembly. Now, the House Speaker, House Speaker here in Lagos, still on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, House Speakership, Tinubu's candidate faces fierce battle with Dogara. And the writer says, APC governors-elect form committee to resolve crisis. Now, Buhari still maintains non-interference position. All could be found on page 5. That's about it on the front page of the Vanguard newspapers. Well, the next port of call on our newspaper review this morning on the Core Digest Extra is the Punch newspaper. well-loaded page there with pictures of queues here and there. Pains, it says pains of fuel scarcity. But before we come to that, let's bring you now housing, furniture allowance. Buhari's ministers, lawmakers to get 9 billion naira. That's on the front page of the Punch newspaper. It says housing and furniture allowance, Buhari's ministers, lawmakers to get 9 billion naira. You can read that on page 3 and 8, pages 3 and 8 of the Punch newspapers. And I was saying that you could see a few cues or the effects or what the Punch says, the pains of fuel scarcity. Now, gridlock caused by vehicles waiting to buy fuel at Otedola end of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. That's the first picture there. And now, motorists caught in traffic along the Apapa-Oshodi, I did mention that earlier, Apapa-Oshodi Expressway as petrol tankers block the road. That's the second picture there. The third one has that passengers boarding a boat at Apapa to escape traffic. Well, alternative means of transport, you might see there. Obviously, an alternative means of transportation for Lagosians, and that's a very welcome development, and it should be further encouraged and improved upon to enable people choose other means of transportation. Of course, safety also should be put into perspective, and we know that efforts have been made to improve on safety, although we've had some mishaps where some have said it's avoidable, but some mishaps have occurred. But since for a while now we've not heard any of such, and of course we hope and believe and pray that such tempo will continue to be maintained, where people will feel very, very safe to seek alternative means of transportation, especially now that Lagos is becoming really, really burdened with the traffic situation. Even when there is no fuel scarcity, we still have to grapple with traffic situation across Lagos. And now, in addition to the current pockets of fuel scarcity that we've had for some time, that seem to be on the rise. And the pictures there on the Punch newspaper. Before we leave the Punch is also capturing there, captured here, saying that Cameroon, 4 Nigerians win in UK elections. That could be found on page 50 on the Punch newspapers. You check Punch out, you see all of these stories. And then, of course, on the front page, also on the Punch Daily today, money laundering, Obasanjo Foundation fires CEO. That's you can get that story on page 10 of the Punch newspapers, where money laundering allegation has resulted in the firing of the chief executive officer of Obasanjo Foundation, and he's been fired, as the report has it. You can read that up on page 10 on the Punch newspapers. Before we leave the Punch newspapers, okay, man stabs girlfriend to death, attempts suicide. These things sometimes happen to the amazement of everyone. Now, what could be the root cause? You could find out that on page 31 of Punch newspapers, where it's reported that a man stabs his girlfriend to death, and of course, even attempting suicide. Is it in a bid to escape justice? Well, you can find out that on page 31 of Punch newspapers. And then the military recovers Boko Haram videos. The Punch is also having that story. You can get the Punch perspective of how that story is being captured on page 47 of the Punch newspapers. But before we leave, finally, the Punch, baby cancer victims' parent lament. Lives are filled with anguish. Pages 24, 25, and 26 captures that Very pathetic story there. Well, before we leave the newspaper review segment here on Core Digest Extra, Saturday 9th of May 2015, the days are running down. There is a date that is very, very, very strong in the minds of Nigerians. Add 20 days to today. You know what I'm talking about. Well, The Guardian is also capturing events in their own perspective here. But first of all, there's a picture there you would like to see again and again, maybe, is President-elect Muhammadu Buhari there being cheered, acknowledging cheers from supporters after the Jumat prayer in Abuja. Well, that's it. Expectations and so on. People are excited and so on. That's on the front page there. The pictures are very bold. Now, on the front page, one of the captions there has it, May 29th, outgoing governments and workers' salary. You can capture that full story, get the full gist. Of course, the picture of the president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, and the current, though a bit of dispute here, factions here and there, but the elected president of the Nigeria Labour Congress there, Ayuba Waba. The picture is there depicting the fact that it's a labor-related story, outgoing governments and workers' salary. You can get the full gist on page 50 of The Guardian to see how probably there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Also on the front page, there on the Guardian newspaper, students apprehend fleeing suspect in Yobe school attack. Now, this is it. This is it. This is where it comes into play, though in a very unusual circumstance, risky one for that matter, where students would have to take over the issue of security. In other words, not sitting back and allowing government agencies to do all, but also taking their destiny in their own hands. And here, the report from The Guardian says, students apprehend fleeing suspect in Yobe school attack. In fact, the writer says, blast kills 3 students, a bomber, 14 others wounded. Now, still on the front page of The Guardian newspapers, Cameroon holds on to power as opposition leaders quits. Now, this is another aspect that Guardian has added to this story on the front page here, where shortly after the announcement of the winner of the party that has won the election in the United Kingdom, other parties, the Labour and other parties, leaders, Nick Clegg, Miliband, all turned in their resignation to not to stop becoming the leader of their party, and also saying that they've done their bit. You can find out that story actually on page 2. It started on the front page. It continues on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper, where you get the full gist of those that have resigned their positions in the United Kingdom as a result of the fallout of the elections. Most of them taking, particularly Mel Miliband took responsibility. Mel Miliband rather took responsibility for the failure, and also believing that they will come out of the woods. You can get the full gist if you're interested in what's happening in England politically. On page 2, continued on page 2 of the Guardian newspapers. And of course, on page 2 as well, you find petroleum marketers ration products and cheat consumers. This is another aspect that has not been brought to light very clearly as it should, is how that petroleum marketers here, Guardian, has captured the fact that they cheat consumers. You can get to know the full gist of how this unfolds, how consumers are cheated on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. Saturday, before we leave the Guardian newspapers on the top corner, you have there Show Blast on page 34, TWO, as they call them. That's for short, but Tunde and Wumi Obe returns with 2+. If you can call it Tunde and Wumi Obe plus. And also, just beside that, you could find that on page 34. And besides that, on page 24, Celebrity Angle, Uru Eke, Nollywood's dazzling new talent. Well, Nollywood, recognized all over the world. I think the third behind Bollywood in terms of movies that are turned out. And is acknowledged, and of course is growing by the day. The outgoing government at the point happened to have supported the entertainment industry. Well, with that, we wrap up the newspaper segment here on Core Digest Extra. Don't go away. Our topic for today is the transition, ahead transition actually. Of course, expectations are still there. Don't go away, we'll go for this quick break. We'll come back and of course we'll have a discuss on that. Stay with us.
Now watch CoreTV News live from anywhere in the world on our website www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to CoreTV Primetime Days.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. On Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click CoreTV, leave a space, then News. CoreTV News, a 24-hour news station.